You know, I think what makes the Switch so special for someone like me who's grown up, in the Xbox 360, Wii, PS3 era is that we don't just have, multiplats like Vampire coming out on this system that are, obviously from the PS4, Xbox One generation. We also have a plethora of games from the previous generation coming out now in handheld form with enhanced features, perhaps better graphics. In the case of the game I'm playing now, downloadable content, all of the downloadable content, the DLC that would have previously existed on those consoles, is just all in this one package. It's all on this one card. So for a game that you might have spent hundreds of dollars on the DLC for and had that DLC be tied to your console, it's now all on this game card, which for game preservation is a great thing. But additionally, cost, price, that's there. If you're someone like me who grew up in that generation and you watched these games come out and you wanted to play them but weren't allowed to, for example, Saints Row 3, I remember when this game came out, and I think it was like 2012. I was 10 years old when that happened. And so I wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to play this game, but I wanted to the whole time. And I looked at, ads for this game come out, and I just desperately wanted to play it because it looked so cool. And of course, I could go back now as a 17-year-old and play all of those games that were on the 360 or the PS3 that I never got to play. But at this time, at this late date, they're just not new anymore. They don't have that new feeling of a game that, just came out and is an exciting event. They just sort of exist there. It's like you're going back for the nostalgia's sake to finally be able to play these games that you always wanted to play. But now on the Switch, it's created this weird paradox where we live in a world where these games that I really wanted to play are still new games. They technically are still new games. They're coming out now, being released with online communities that are very active on this new console. And that's such a surreal feeling for me. Where the Switch has a massive library. There's a lot of games on here, but the all of these games that get re-released that meant something to me or would have meant something to me if I were just able to play them in that generation are now brand new video games that you know that end up having these very active communities with them. I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really cool. And just imagine being able to play through a huge open world game like this on a handheld. Like I remember when the Game Boy Advance was still relevant. I remember when the DS was still relevant. You couldn't imagine an open world game being put on one of those systems. It just wasn't going to happen. And now the technology has progressed so much at this point that we can actually put the definitive version, not just a version, the definitive version of an open world game like Saints Row the Third onto a handheld console. I, what universe are we living in? I remember when the PS Vita came out and there was all this buzz about is GTA 5 going to come out on the Vita? When is the GTA 5 port coming? And I always thought it wasn't going to happen because the budget would be too big and they just simply wouldn't have the resources to be able to do something like that. If the Vita was more popular, maybe, but I just didn't see it occurring. And now we live in a world where one of the most popular consoles that Nintendo has ever had is a powerful handheld system that's able to play all of these games that I was excited about and am excited about, um, for however long. It's just such a weird world that we live in now. Like the Switch has sold better on its I believe in its like first couple months than any Nintendo console in the history of their entire history as a company. But think about that. This little system right here. Um, and it's because they have games like this. It isn't just because they have, the great JRPG exclusives and all of the, cool indie games, because Nintendo has lowered the barrier of entry to put things on the console, has lowered the amount of copies you have to be able to make. Um, but it's also because they've been so good about re-releasing better versions of games from the previous generation that people like me want to go back to, or people like me want to play for the first time. There's so many people who are actually younger than me who, the Switch may be their first console, and they're playing these games for the first time. Where I actually get nostalgia for a lot of games in the 360 generation. As weird as that sounds to say in this myopic world we live in, where everything, happens so quickly, that console came out in 2005. I was 3 years old when the 360 came out. Think about that. 2005. What were you doing in 2005? Um, and now, the PS5 and the Xbox Scarlet, or whatever they're calling it, is right around the corner. Um, and it's so weird to think about that, like, during the 360 generation, the last generation was like the PS2. That was the last generation, was that era of consoles. Um, and now, like, the PS2 is like the PS1 in this current generation. That's what the PS1 was for me during that time. And very soon, the PS2 is going to be like the Nintendo 64's generation. Or wait, no, did I? It's going to be like the Super Nintendo's generation. I got it mixed up. Like, we're so many generation through at this point. I died. Wait, no, I didn't die. I'm about to, though. I have to get away from the police. The pigs. The pigs are coming after me. Okay. That's the fun part about these games, is that it's always about getting into big police chases and trying to get away from the cops, trying to cause a whole bunch of mayhem. That's what these games are about. Like, the missions are fun, robbing banks is fun, but for me, the strength of these games has always been causing a big ruckus and then trying to get away really fast. Now, I remember when the first Saints Row came out. That was like 2005. It was a launch title for. Was it? I don't think it was a launch title for the 360, but it was like one of the first games to come out on the system proper. Okay, can I steal this tank? No, I can't steal this tank because they have a guy manning it. I gotta run away really fast. They really sent out the big guns. In most games like this, the cops don't have tanks, but in this game they have tanks. So they fuck you over so hard. Like in Watch Dogs, the police are so easy to get away from. You don't even know how easy the police are to evade in that game. In this game, it's something else. They send the entire. They don't send just the police department after you. They send the military after you. Let me tell you. Okay, I need to get out of here so fast. These are the games that people in my generation have nostalgia for. It's not like, the previous generations were. Well, they're thinking of platformers, and they're thinking of great JRPGs. I mean, I have nostalgia for a lot of games like that. I played a lot of games like that in my very young years. But at the same time, like, these were the games that were coming out in my early days.